today we're going to draw Pikachu. Before we get started, I want us to pay attention to his shapes. Can you identify some of the shapes that you see? Remember, shapes are very important when it comes to construction. So let's get started building our little friend here. Let's first start with the loose shape of his head. Do you see the oval? Next, his body has a very unique shape. And it comes down from his head like that. Now the best thing I can do is show you that his head is an oval and his body is a rectangle. So we have oval and rectangle. Do you see that? Next, we want to come in and draw some of these bigger shapes that we see. Let's work on his ears. His ears are elongated ovals or ellipses. Just like that. Very simple. Next, I'm going to come in and draw his arms. And if you've watched our tutorial on cylinders, you'll see that his arm is basically a cylinder. Here and here. Now out of this arm we have, how many fingers does Pikachu have? 5. So he has, I'm going to draw a little circle here for an oval for his hand. Go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then his 5th is a thumb. Then on this side, I'll come and do the same thing. There's his thumb, come out, up, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I'm going to draw this line here that goes right across from his pinky finger, and that indicates this part of the palm right here. See that? Right there. And then I'm going to highlight half of this circle and not the other half. And we'll clean this up here in just a minute. Next, I want to draw his little feet. How many toes does Pikachu have? Pikachu has 3 toes. So I'm drawing half ovals or ellipses at the bottom of his body. But I'm rounding it off just a little bit at the tip. And then I'm going to come in and give him 3 toes. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Just like that. Next, I'm going to work on his facial features. Come up here. I'm going to round out his head a little bit more, erase some of these fine lines where I was trying to locate the good lines. Now what I want to do is, because I have this oval here, I want to find make his head a little more dimensional and make sure that everything is kind of following along on the curve of his face. So I'm going to lightly draw where the very front of his face would be. Do you see that? Very lightly, because I can erase this here in just a minute. He has a very teeny tiny nose. And I'm just giving his nose like that. I'm going to draw his eyes, which are basically circles. But if you notice, this circle is more of a complete circle. This one is more of a collapsed circle because of the angle of his head. Following that, I'm going to come down here, and Pikachu's mouth is very similar to a cat. So the very center of the top of his mouth is going to come towards that nose and down and back up towards the eye. Do you see that? It's like an elongated W. Then I want to come in. I don't want to connect it to the very tip-top corner of his mouth. I want to come in just a little bit and draw an elongated U. Now this U is not straight down, it's actually at an angle because his head is at an angle. And my Pikachu is going to look a little bit different than the original, but I don't have a lot of practice drawing Pikachu, so that we're all learning together here. So there's his mouth, and then I'm going to give him a tongue indication, just like that. Next, I want to draw his big red cheeks, which is an oval, and then another oval, but a more circular on the other side. Now I want to come in and give him these light spots in his eyes, because I'm fairly happy with how his face is looking. Circle, circle at the very top of his eyes, and I'm going to come in and do some shading to fill in those eyes. Next, I've noticed that I want to make his head a little bit more round and not quite so flat. So I'm going to come in here, bring that head up just a little bit, like that. Making a few more adjustments. I'm giving it a little bit of more of a slope right there than I originally had. Come in here to his ear. Pikachu's ear is divided. The tips are black. So we come in here about two-thirds of the way up and color it. And then come back here, 2/3 of the way back, and draw our line. And then I'm just going to go ahead and shade those with some simple lines. Then I'm going to follow these lines all the way down here to his little leg. Now I'm going to work on his tail. Do this very lightly because Pikachu's tail is pretty unique. Kind of like a bolt of lightning if you pay attention to it, which is important because what does Pikachu shoot out of his little cheeks? Lightning, right? We come out. So 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. See that? Come back out. 1, 1, 2, and 3. And then it fans out as it comes up. It doesn't just do that. It actually fans where it meets the tail is smaller than where it goes out. So it goes up and out. Just like that. And then on the second point, Pikachu's tail has little color division where it's actually brown, and I'm going to lightly shade that so we can see it better. And he also has stripes on his back, 1, 2 on his back, and I'm just going to lightly shade that. How's our Pikachu looking? Then, because I'm just using pencil, I'm just going to come in and lightly shade his cheeks. I'm going to come in and lightly shade his mouth to give it a little bit more depth. Now what I want to do is erase some of my construction lines. Remember, I only wanted half of that arm to be highlighted, and I'm going to tighten it up just a little bit. Erase some of my circle. There's the dividing line on his face. I can come in here and erase where I outline that oval. All right, how does Pikachu look? Let's find some of those lines, darken them up just a little bit. Now what you would do is you would take your pencil and you would make sure, try not to pick up your pencil very much, and go along the outside of the body to darken those lines to make him look more solid. Now I'm going to show you something that's a little tricky, but I'm going to challenge you just a little bit. Let's add some shading to Pikachu. Now, if I drew a pillow, let's say this is a pillow, and the sun was up here shining towards the pillow, light would be hitting it here and here, and I would have shading like this to indicate that that's actually a bulge and the light is hitting it here at the top and it's darker underneath because the light's not hitting it. So because the light is coming towards Pikachu, I'm going to lightly draw some shading lines on his body, just like that. But then I'm going to very lightly come back with my pencil and shade with parallel lines that are very light. And then because his feet are actually slightly behind his body would be covering part of his foot, and there would be a shade line here and here. I'll come back and lightly shade those. Then I'm going to come in here, I'm going to shade part of the inside of his hand and then the under of his arm. See that? Very lightly come in and shade parallel lines. I'm going to do a little bit here because his hand would partially block some of the sun, just like that. I'm going to come in here about halfway up where the ear connects to the back of his head. I'm going to draw a line here, shade. Do the same thing here, shade. And if I wanted to, I could follow his tail out and do some additional shading there. How's Pikachu look? Do you see how the shading gives him a little bit more dimension? Every time you practice, you get just a little bit better. Remember to like and subscribe to this channel. Also, consider supporting this project on Patreon.